Good afternoon, everyone. I'm hoping everybody can hear me. This is Waheedah Shabazz-El from PWN. So we have feedback.
I just muted my mic, and I'm hoping that will give you guys less feedback. Great. So we just want to welcome everybody to our first in a series of educational webinars on political education. And I am also hearing some feedback. So if anyone, I would really like it if you were all to call in, not use the speaker on your computers, and just make sure that you're actually using your phone to dial in from your phone. That would be great. There's a lot of noise in the background. So if you're on your computer, and thank you, you can mute your mics on your computer that just went away. Great, everybody. And please try to call in on the number as opposed to using the mics on your computer. Great. So great. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll reintroduce myself for those of you who may not know me. I am Waheedah Shabazz-El. I'm a director of regional organizing at Poverty Women's Network USA. I'm also a founding member, and we are so excited to bring you this webinar series on political education. This is a one-on-one deconstructing political systems to build community power. We intend to do this series for over the next 18 months. So just to make sure that we have what we need to survive the next 4 years and beyond. We have guest speakers today. I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. I would just like to say that we have several members of PWN who are also here helping with the technology: Vanessa Johnson, Jenny Camejo, Arnita Rogers, and Cammie Dotson, I believe, are here. I think Nana's still out the country. I'm not sure. But let me give you some background on why we're having this whole series. The purpose of PWN-USA Political Education Program is to build capacity among women living with HIV to participate effectively and strategically in the political process, in democracy and community organizing and in movement building. This will expand our community's participation in existing systems. We're also committed to visioning and building new systems and dismantling existing ones that are not working for our communities. So what is political education? According to the Center for Political Education, it is an analysis of the social, political, and economic trends impacting our work, our lives, and our rights. It's crucial to develop strong, clear political strategies that can result in revolutionary transformation and fundamental shifts in power. So we're talking about transformational, revolutionary transformation, fundamental shifts in power, and we're talking about our ability to make an impact on these systems. So this is very important that we get these basics of political education if we haven't had them already. And so we're going to go ahead and continue with the program because we have some learning objectives, and I will introduce you to our presenters, and then we'll go right on. So our learning objectives at the conclusion of this presentation, we hope the participants will have an introductory understanding of why political education matters, what are political systems, what is democracy, public policy and public policy, that's domestic and foreign policy, the role of civic engagement and why that's important, and also how to make change through our advocacy. And as I promised, we have 3 presenters today. We have Venita Ray, who's from the Legacy Community Health Project in Houston, Texas. She's also on our board of directors of PWN-USA. We also have Kamaria Laffrey. She's on our communications work group at PWN-USA. She's also an organizer for the Serial Project, and I'm also going to help with this presentation as well as the regional, as the director of regional organizing. So I think what I'll do right now, I believe I'm going to turn this over to Kamaria. He'll take the first section. This will be in 3 sections, and afterwards we'll hear from Venita, and then we'll hear from back to me. So Kamaria, I'm happy to move the slides There's background. If that's you just coming on, there's a lot of background where you are, background noise. I'm not sure how you're going to.
Okay. Let me see. Is this better?
That's much better. You can, you muted your mic. That's much better. Thank you. You can go right ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Waheedah, for the wonderful introduction and the invitation to present today on this webinar. I do have to give a technical disclosure. I cannot see the slides because I do not have internet where I am. The Wi-Fi is very spotty and it keeps kicking me out. But I do have notes to be able to talk through the slides as Waheedah transitions from one to another. I'm really excited to be a part of the webinar today because for me personally, politics was not something I ever thought I'd be involved in, besides just casting my vote for city, state, and national elections. And this past year has taught me otherwise, as I'm sure it has for many of you as well. And I'm really glad PWN is investing time into making sure that others are engaged in our political system that we are going to discuss and go over today. So, before we can do anything, we must define what we are studying. Before we can deconstruct our political system, as our title directs, we must understand the intended structure, right? So politics, according to Merriam-Webster, is defined as several things: the art or science of government, the art or science concerned with guiding or influencing governmental procedure, the art or science concerned with winning and holding control over a government, and lastly, political affairs or business, especially in competition between competing interest groups or individuals for power and leadership. So now that we have a basic understanding of different definitions of politics, it's important to, dive into what political systems we operate under and gain an understanding of how a nation can be governed. So some of the most common ways are democracy, republic, or monarchies, communism, and dictatorship. As we go through the remainder of this webinar, our focus will be on what our nation is governed under, which is a democracy. So with knowing that, understanding what democracy is, it's a government by the people, especially rule of the majority, or a government in which the supreme power is vested in the people and exercised by them directly or indirectly through a system of representation, usually involving periodically held free elections. And this is where we, the people, comes in. And this is why our preamble or introduction to our Constitution of the United States starts with we, the people, hence why we are called constituents, because the document is supposed to represent the fundamental concept of nothing for us without us. But it doesn't stop there with understanding democracy. We then break that down into two different types, which is direct and representative. So on one hand, you have direct democracy, which is where every citizen has an equal say in the workings of government. Example of participatory budget processes. And you have, on the other hand, you have representative democracy, which is where citizens elect their representatives who make the laws, such as our U.S. government, the Congress, and consisting of the Congress and President. Now, of the two, the United States operates under a representative democracy. And this is also back to the process of we the people, where we better understand and can answer the question of who selects the electors. Choosing each state's electors is also a two-part process. First, you have the political parties in each state choose slates of potential electors sometime before the general election. And then secondly, on election day, the voters in each state select their state's electors by casting their ballots for their president. And this process should be, fresh in everyone's minds. The first part of this process is controlled by political parties in each state and varies from state to state because every state is unique. The second part of the process happens actually on Election Day. And many people are sometimes unaware of this process after they've already cast their ballot. But when the voters in each state cast their vote for a presidential candidate of their choice, they're voting to select their state's electors. The potential electors' names may or may not appear on the ballot below the name of the presidential candidate, depending on how the election procedures and ballot forms operate in each state. And I think Waheedah or someone from PWN will give you a link in the chat box where you can read more about what we call the Electoral College. And I'm learning personally and understanding that it's something that's highly debated, and but it's very important to know about in going along in our democracy. So in knowing that, you ask yourself, so what does all this mean? Especially when we, the people, the voters, the constituents, we work through intermediaries, our legislators, that represent our interests in making policy. And this is why our elected officials work for us, for you, for what you care about. We have the vote to put them in position to make policy, therefore they gain their direction from us, from the people that they represent. So now in understanding what our nation is intended to be governed by, and then examining the landscape of our nation right now and historically, we have to ask the question: Is the United States really a democracy? Of the estimated 325 million people living in the U.S., 6.1 million are impacted in their ability to be a part of the democracy because of a felony conviction, for example. So now we're looking at a system that is built on leaving out a portion of the constituency, a portion of there's populations of we the people whose voice don't get heard. And this is why the PWN calls to actions and other organizations calls to actions are so important. And it's also why action on criminal justice reform is so critical right now. And as I was saying, the calls to actions are on specific issues or public policy, which are government policies that affect the whole population and are comprised of the laws, the actions of the government, the funding priorities, and the regulations that reflect given positions, attitudes, cultural ideas, or accepted rules. So as we further understand what the policies are, we begin to separate them into two categories once again, and know them each as objectives that a government sets regarding the health, the welfare, and the safety of its citizens and the actions it takes to accomplish the objectives through either domestic or foreign policy. So those are the two types. You have domestic, and then you have foreign. Domestic policy is the administrative decisions that are made to address the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens within its nation's borders. For managing these issues, there is a domestic policy council that is used by the President of the United States for considering domestic policy matters and operates in parts of the Office of the White House policy. And this can include subordinate office such as the Office of National Aid Policy. And the director of the DPC is titled as the Assistant to the President and the Director of the Domestic Policy Council. So we've, and I do have to stop here with my technical disclaimer I gave earlier. The slides that are going to define the next thing that we're going to discuss, I do not have that in front of me, so I apologize. But we've mentioned, I'll go over what they are. We've mentioned one example of a domestic policy office. There's 6 categories that take up our domestic policy issues, and that includes our social policy, our public health policy, public health policy, education, environmental, criminal justice policy, and economic. And the next couple of slides will go over those separately by definition. And I'm still not able to see the slides. So if Waheedah, if you could take that over for me, I'd appreciate it. I apologize.
I certainly can. It's not a problem at all. Thank you for bringing us this far, and you've done an excellent job. So I'm just going to go over a few categories that Kamaria just talked about as the domestic policy agenda. 6 things that, 6 systems that are supposed to be put in place with the objective of creating a healthy, safe environment for everybody who lives in this country. So the social policy relates to the issues that affect the general welfare of everyday citizens in the United States. This includes social insurance programs like Social Security, unemployment insurance. It also includes public assistance programs like cash assistance, housing programs, and food stamps. That's under social policy. Then there's the second of the 6, which is the public health policy that focuses on the health of the population and includes both efforts to promote and protect health of the population. It includes federal programs providing health care that include Medicare, and Medicaid. Public health also involves implementing and enforcing regulations that protect the public, such as the Food and Drug Administration. So the public health policy is not only for insurance, but it also protects the public from, food and drug regulations. That's social policy, that's public health policy. The next 2 are education policy and environmental policy. So education policy is concerned with the education of citizens. Traditionally, primary and secondary education has been the purview of the local government, but federal and state governments have become more involved. In fact, the United States Department of Education is a cabinet-level department now. So educational policy is concerned with the education of the citizens, right? Again, traditionally primary school, secondary education, and now that the Education Policy Department is under the Department of Education. It's a cabinet-level department. Environmental policy focuses on and regulates the manner in which we interact with our environment, such as clean water and air regulations. As we go on further, we'll talk more about the environment because, as we all know, our environment consists of more. We need more to live in a safe environment other than clean water and clean air. But for the purposes of giving the definitions of these of this policy, domestic policy agenda, the 6 areas, the environmental policy focus on regulating the manner in which we interact with the environment, such as clean water, clean air regulations. Then there's the criminal justice policy, which is concerned with law and order. It involves deciding what behavior will be illegal and how perpetrators will be punished. It may also involve crime prevention programs. And then lastly, there's this economic policy, which attempts to create and maintain a strong economy. It seeks to accomplish through manipulation of the tax rate, government spending, interest rates, and money supply. Economic policy also involves regulating businesses, activities, and consumer transactions. So those are the 6 domestic policy areas, and just short definitions of what each objective is for each of those categories. So I'm not sure if Kamaria needs me to continue, or do you tell me what you need me to do? Because I can continue if you need me to.
I actually do need you to continue. I apologize.
Okay, that's not a problem. So I think what we wanted you all to remember was that many of our systems were designed to disenfranchise and oppress people, right? And it's happened. We know that it's happened. Our goal as human rights and social justice advocates is not just to help the systems work better. We always talk about trying to make these systems work to do what they were designed to do. Some of these systems were designed to disenfranchise and oppress people, right? So our job as human rights activists and social justice advocates is not just to help the system work better, but we must fundamentally transform systems and sometimes build new ones in order to have justice for our communities. Sometimes we have to wipe away those systems that we see were designed to disenfranchise us and fundamentally transform and bring new systems in, ones that's going to help to build order in our communities and have justice for our communities. That's what we want you to remember about these policies. Some of these policies were designed for good, and some weren't designed for people to have power. So when we talked about domestic policy, we got to talk about foreign policy just a tiny bit and understand that foreign policy becomes very, very important when it threatens any of our domestic policy. If it threatens the environment, if it threatens safe public health, if it threatens social, if it threatens environmental, then our foreign policy becomes very, very important. So the foreign policy is ways that our government advances its interests internationally and globally, right? So, for example, global economic policies and trade agreements, like PEPFAR. We give aid to other countries, but we have restrictions on spending, right? Which ideally, spending like we want to ban aid to organizations that's working with sex workers. So we have gag rules. We have global gag rules, right? Like they reinstated, some global gag rules are reinstated by about 45 different countries, right? They prohibit foreign non-governmental organizations from receiving U.S. funding, from counseling health clients about abortion, right? So that we have our own interests that we place on out into the global spaces and foreign policy. And some of the examples of the way we do that is when we give money out for PEPFAR or other things that they're gag rules. We'll give you this money, but you can't help sex workers. And yes, we'll give you this money, but you can't get counseling for women or families about abortion, around abortion law liberation. And Teresa's in the chat box. She says, yes, some systems are created to oppress social groups of black and brown individuals, such as criminal justice systems and the new Jim Crow laws. I certainly agree with you, Teresa. Thank you for bringing that up for everybody. And so we live in this democracy, right? And I'm always a person, if you ever hear me do a training, I always say free ain't free. Because that's where I got that from the old folks when I came up. Free is not free. And the freedom that we have of living in a democracy comes with a responsibility. And that responsibility is advocacy. Advocacy is a responsibility of everyone who lives in a democracy. We don't just get to live in a democracy for free and just go on about our lives and we have no responsibilities, right? We have a responsibility to engage our policymakers. We have a responsibility to engage the media. And we have a responsibility to engage other citizens in meaningful discussions about what affects the public. That's what advocacy is. That's our responsibility for living in a democracy. So when we try to train people or inform people or lead people in a way of advocacy, we are only guiding you to what your responsibility is as the person who gets to live in a democracy. Everybody doesn't get to live in a democracy. But those of us who do, in the way that we protect our democracy, we have to engage the policymakers. All policies are not good policies. We have to let them know when they're not good because, again, we live in a representative democracy. But they should be taking our voices into Congress. They should be taking our voices and our consciousness when they do their voting, right? So sometimes we have to back our policy. We have to back them up, push them back, and the same thing with the media. So these are our responsibilities that we have for just being able to live in a democracy. And so this is the last slide in Kamaria's section, and it asks, why does political education matter? And I'm sure there's a number of reasons you all may have. You can add it in the chat box if you like. We just put some of the reasons. Why does political education matter? Well, we said educating ourselves about political process is going to help us survive the next 4 years and beyond. I think that was one of the biggest influences for me when we were putting together this session. I wanted to make sure people had the nuts and bolts of what they needed, what's actually going on. I didn't know what level people were. I let people allow people to do their own self-assessment, whether they needed to be here for Political Education 101, or could you just wait off until Political Education 102 came? We let you do your own assessment to see, so it's good that we have these basic here, the nuts and the bolts, right, that we know is going to help us survive over the next 4 years and beyond. Right. Someone also said, Andrea Johnson says that political education matters because if you don't know how to help to affect change, you will probably fail in your efforts. Right? If you don't know the rules to the game, it's hard to play the game. Right? So, and we have to be players with their roles for all of us. as advocates and as citizens, right? Their roles to us as citizens. And so another reason why the political education process matters, because the election process gives us a chance. This election process actually gives us a chance to turn both the Senate and the Congress around. So we know we have a number of elections coming up. We have some coming up November. Different places, there'll be different elections. November 17th, there's elections. The next year, in May 2018, there's elections. There's more elections in November 2018. We have an opportunity to turn the Senate and to turn the Congress around and put people in who will support people living with HIV and other disabilities, people who will support citizens, right? So that's another reason why political education matters, because it gives us the opportunity to prepare our communities by ensuring everyone's registered to vote and making sure and doing it today, not waiting until May the 1st of 2018, but to start being a part of that process, getting people registered today to get ready to change the way the Senate sits and change the way the Congress looks, right? And so these are some of the reasons why we felt that political education was really important. And Kamaria, I know maybe you want to share, maybe you want to end your session by sharing something wonderful and amazing that was happening yesterday with your own advocacy around political education, and then we'll have Venita come in and start. But I would love for you to have the last word for this session and why you feel that political education matters, and to share with us some of the work that you may be doing that maybe everybody hasn't heard about yet.
Yes, absolutely. So yesterday, Florida, we have been able to have an awesome champion for our bill. We have 4 specific HIV statutes based on bodily fluids. To be brief, what we were able to do yesterday was finally reach our first Senate committee session, and it passed the Criminal Justice Committee unanimously. So that was, from the standing point we have now, that was the most difficult committee we would be approaching, because we are framing this in a public health narrative. We knew that a lot of committee members on the Criminal Justice Committee were not going to be amicable to a lot of the different things that we wanted in the bill, but they do agree that HIV should be on an even playing field of penalties. So we were able to drop our HIV law from from a felony to a misdemeanor. And we were surprised that we were able to keep sex workers in that category. We were shocked that they didn't touch that part of our bill. They didn't think that sex workers living with HIV should be prosecuted under a felony. However, they are still, I believe they are still being forced to be tested. So we're going to tackle that and going into our next round of committee session negotiations, or whatever you want to call it, as we move forward. So that's the success of Florida. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears has gone into just that one step. And I will, like I said in the beginning, my political education was just me, being registered to vote and know, where my district was and to go vote. I didn't ever think I'd be involved in something like this. And it just goes to tie into, there's this popular saying of knowledge is power, right? Well, I always take that a step further by saying it's the applied knowledge that saves your life, or it's the applied knowledge that's the cure, whatever you want to make that applied knowledge be. But, this webinar is a prime example of that. We're going to gain this knowledge. We're going to enhance what we know, but we must apply it. We must go out. We must respond to the calls to action. We must respond when we hear injustices are happening. We have the power. And that's why I think, knowing about your political process is important. So I'm excited to see what else we're going to be doing with the remainder of the political education webinars.
Thank you so very much. We are so very excited about the work that you all are doing in Florida that can be duplicated everywhere. And thank you so much for being a part of this webinar. You're free to ask questions in the chat box or make comments. You'll also, at the end, we'll open up we'll unmute the lines if folks want to ask questions out loud. But in the meantime, if there's anything that you've heard through Kamaria's presentation that you would like to hear more about, just let us know in the chat box, and we'll make sure that we come back to it. I'm going to go ahead and call on Venita Ray, who's one of our board of directors, member of the board of directors of the National PWN, and an attorney who's from Houston. And do you need me to move your slides, Venita, or are you going to move them yourself?
I'll move them.
Okay. Take it away.
Y'all hear me? Hey. Good afternoon,
yes,
everybody. And let me just say, I am really, really honored to be a part of this, as well as really proud of PWN for taking this step and doing this and seeking to educate us and get people equipped to do the work that we are already doing. But how do we soup it up? How do we, turbocharge some of our work? So I'm really excited to do this. And thank you, Kamaria. I love where you started at. And, I'm going to talk about power and why advocate, why organize, why speak out. And I know I can see some of you are on this call. I'm kind of preaching to the choir. You know why but to go back to something Kamaria was talking about, that, the foundation of our democracy is that power is vested in the people. Participation is a responsibility of that democracy. And if it's truly invested in the people, then we have a responsibility and we have a right to advocate, to speak out, to organize when our self-interest or when the interests of others we care about is not being respected or acknowledged. You go back to the beginnings of this country, even though, it didn't contemplate some of us and some of us at 3/5 of a person, but it was built on protest. They left England protesting not being treated right and or not being able to fully exercise what they felt was their religious freedom or whatever. So I truly believe where Frederick Douglass says power conceives nothing without demand, and in getting ready for this webinar, you'll hear me make reference to Rosa Parks, because you never underestimate the power of one person who didn't sit down and who said no to the system that sparked a whole movement that exerted a whole lot of political and economic power that created change. So why we have to, why not? It's just not a choice anymore, especially, it's never been a choice, but in particular what happened last year where it's time to take it to another level. So I believe we have individual power and we have collective power. So individual power, Rosa Parks not taking that seat. The collective power is what happened and that created change. So focusing now on just the domestic policy side of this, there are ways that we use our collective power in ways to make domestic policy work for us in the ways that it was really designed, and Waheedah broke down about the 6 types of domestic policy. I'm just going to go over them a little bit more, and that's social policy and the way that we make that relevant to what we're doing today and how it impacts people's lives, because it represents that responsibility of a government to provide a social safety net for folks who are vulnerable, or people, or our children, or people who don't have resources to provide cash assistance or stable, affordable housing. I talk to a lot of people who say, well, I don't really care about the election, but if you have a Section 8 voucher, which you have to depend on, this election could impact that. The people in power making changes and decisions about things, our social policy that could impact your ability to have a roof over your head. So social policy really impacts us at our heart. Public health policy, we all are seeing how this plays out right today as we have our Congress folks trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act and implementing the American Health Care Act, or discussing that. I hope everybody on the webinar has made the call to voice their opinion on this. But that public health policy impacts the ability of people to get Medicaid, for disabled folks, people who are sick, children, pregnant women, the elderly, and to be able to protect some of the gains we made through the Affordable Care Act by, providing care for people with pre-existing conditions. So public health policy is extremely important and relevant daily. The education policy, this is the federal assurance that that we would be educated, that all folks, all students would have a right to education, proper learning environment. We know primary schools being free, unless people want to take their kids other places, or having access to financial aid to pursue, higher education. So we know for a lot of us, our folks really impress upon us the ability to exceed in education and give ourselves opportunities that they didn't have. So education policy is extremely important to the movement. Environmental policy, it's more than just what we eat and drink, but making our neighborhoods safe, environmental justice issues of neighborhoods being located next to sewage plants or transfer stations. They typically are based on zoning kind of rules and stuff, but keeping our neighborhoods safe from violence and drugs in addition to clean air. When we look at some of the social determinants of health and social drivers, a clean neighborhood has an impact on a child's ability to go to school and learn, or crime to be able to come out and play. So environmental policy is impacts us daily. I know Waheedah and Kamaria talked a lot about the criminal justice policy, which has huge impact. The work that Florida is doing around this, not only about HIV criminalization, but mass incarceration, which we know so many of the communities I'm from are impacted by and are at the root of a lot of our HIV epidemic, but other aspects of it, being able to participate in the vote, in the democratic participatory process. Is impacted by our criminal justice system. People, depending on the type of drug you use, you might get more time than if it's in powder form versus. So this is really one of those structural systems that was designed to oppress, in my opinion. The ability to police what pregnant women do, what they put into their bodies, criminalizing people's ability to earn a living, whether sex work or not, your choice to earn a living. Criminal justice really hugely impacts our ability, being involved in the criminal justice system could impact your ability to get housing, so criminal justice system is these kind of policies impact us daily. And then lastly, the economic policies. I mean, the ability to go to work and make a living wage, not based on gender or all other kinds of disparities that result result from inequities in our economic policy and tax burdens or lack thereof for people who really can least afford them. So, using our collective power to impact all of these policies that really impact us every day in our daily lives is really critical to change. And so if we talk about, what kinds of power do we have? How do we use that power? There's a number of types of group power. I talked about that individual power, the collective power around our civilian power, the ability to support what we value. That means we can support, we can go places that we support what they do. We can put our money, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later, where we to show our support and to try to continue something that we support. The ability to form our own government, to be representative of what we value, whether it's in our local leaders, our mayors, our council members, our ability to run and become part of this system, and represent the interests of people we understand. We have the ability as groups, or our civilian ability, to organize boycotts, petitions. We all on this webinar know a lot about that, drafting sign-on letters, using social media, participating in all type of protests, nonviolent actions. And one of my favorite, we have the ability to disrupt business, and because, again, I go back to those 60s and before, those folks, when they, even after the Rosa Parks and the West boycott, folks really saw, wow, we can go in and disrupt business and create change. So sit-ins, sit-downs, die-ins, At the beginning of our AIDS movement, the original AIDS activists learned that, they could lay down and disrupt traffic and things and get attention. We have economic and spending power, and sometimes I don't think we realize how much power we have here. The ability to raise money, even if it's $1 at a time, I don't think we really, and I know I wasn't taught to recognize that I had economic power because we were considered low income. But $1 from 10,000 people is $10,000. We have the power to choose how we spend our money. I have a friend asked me the other day, did I go see a movie? And she said, unless you're not going because you're boycotting it, because she knows if I don't support the message or the people creating the movie, I'm not going to spend my money on the movie. That one I just hadn't got a chance to see it yet. But we have also the ability to not spend our money in places that we don't support what they do or the interests they represent. So economic power and spending power is a big one, because in the democracy and capitalistic system we live in, money really does represent power to some of the people we're trying to get to listen to us. We also have political and legislative powers. The power of the vote and the power to vote and support for people that we support, or to pass legislation, and that's why voter registration drives and reminding people, yes, your vote counts, is so important to what we're doing today. And again, legal power. We have the ability to sue in court. We have the ability to challenge actions. A lot of times, court cases take a while, so we still got to be doing other things in the meantime. But, when we look at the type of travel bans that were stopped pretty quickly as a result of this power, that's pretty awesome. And so how do we use these uses of the power? So, I talked about economics and things like that. So power is usually used in a couple ways, having lots of money and exerting power in that way, or having lots of people. Clearly having both is real power, having money and lots of people. For most of our campaigns, we might not have the money, but we can definitely mobilize the people. So civilian organizations tend to have more people than money. And how do we reach more people? Social media, and we have a lot of ways to do that today. But I still submit that if we can reach people, even if we can put people's feet or hands to work, $1 here and $1 there, I believe we can still exert a little bit more economic power in the long run. But if nothing else, we have individuals willing to vote, walk, write, call. We can exercise power. So our ability to win depends on our ability to do with people what the other side can do with money. And then I'm always going to say we have more money, economic power than we know. But so someone told me a long time ago, if you want to see what's important to people, look how they spend their time and their money. How they spend their time. So look at their calendar and their checkbook, time and money, how we spend that. So power generally takes three forms. We can deprive somebody of something they want. So we don't vote for you. We don't spend their money. We won't pay rent till you do what we say. We can give you something that you want by supporting bills, supporting your candidacy, supporting your business effort, or we can step to the side and build our own, elect our own, create our own that supports the issues that we want. So all three are relevant. We can be doing them all at the same time. One is not mutually exclusive of the other. But generally three forms: not giving you something you want, supporting something you're doing that we like, and then creating our own. So knowledge is power, but not until we use it. I'm sorry, I didn't know this had been changed, but people talk a lot about knowledge being power, and I say knowledge isn't power until we use it. Because we can all be smart and we can know a lot of things, but if we're not putting the rubber to the road and using it to affect change, or at least giving someone else that knowledge so that they can do it, it's not power until we use it. I love the quote by Alice Walker that says the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. And this is how I was raised. I was not raised to believe I had power. And it's been coming out and interacting with other folks who saw their power even in the face of people telling they didn't, that I began to understand that I had some. And I love the other picture here. If you notice, all the small fishes can group together to eat the big fish. Otherwise, we're all eaten by big fish when they can get us by ourselves. But our collective power allows us to go after the big fish. So I totally love that. So this is kind of, civic education is kind of similar to what Kamaria was talking about, this political education. And so we talked about, the types of policies and then the types of power we have, individual, collective, and ways in which we use it and to do what. Some of the root of that and what Kamaria and the folks in Florida did was they started off at civic education. What we're seeing is the fruits of their labor started a long time ago by going out to the community and educating them. So civic education is a democracy in education and self-government. Democratic self-government means that citizens are actively involved in their own governance. They do not just passively accept the dictums of others or concede to the demands of others. It's intended to make citizens prospective leaders. I love that, to reduce disparities in political power by giving everyone the knowledge, confidence, and skills they need to participate. Because I know that they were in Florida a long time ago educating people to what the law said, reminding people that together they could change it if they didn't like it. I think that's pretty powerful. You got to understand what the language is and what the process is, and then how we can influence that process. Without that education, I used to always say I was a soldier charging a windmill because I didn't know that I need to be directed somewhere and I need to know how to go in and engage in the system. So to me, civic education gives people the tools and information in which to engage the system and the confidence in believing that they can create change with that knowledge. Oh, sorry. And so as a result of that civic education, then civic engagement is the process by which we build power. And again, just letting people know that this is the rules. Together we can do something, and these are the things we need to do it. And then for me, that was when I began to see myself as a part of a process and a system that I could actually go do something. So it encompasses a range of specific actions, such as even working in a soup kitchen or neighborhood association or writing letters in opposition to bills or candidates, organizing town halls. So someone, believed that they could do something and then got together and began to do it. And this is where power is built. And this is where I see PWN at this point as well. Civic engagement means working with other social justice groups and movements and developing a combination of knowledge, skills, values, and motivation to make difference. More than ever, we're talking about how we collaborate with other movements, because where you lack, I can make up, or you can reach people I can't, and how we work together, or even within our own movement. You like to take notes, you like to speak. How do we use all of our skills and knowledge to build power and create change? So I love the idea of civic engagement. And so why does civilian power, civic education, and civic engagement matter? Because it is the heart of our system here. It is the way that we get our needs met, protect the interests of others. When I think back to Rosa Parks, who didn't sit down and a movement was built, they refused to ride the bus for those 300 and something days that exerted some economic power that they may not have even known they had, and created change. When I see what's happened in Florida, I can talk about some of my own issues. I love the Florida one. They went out and they started educating folks. They began to organize folks, and then they've created some political power and political engagement around the issue of HIV criminalization. I think it's awesome. As a result of all this, we have an informed citizenry. We have people who or engage in people who are empowered to create change and involve others. So that's it for me. Thank y'all.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I would like to snap my fingers and stomp my feet and stuff for you and both you and Kamaria, because this information is not simple. It's simplistic, but the way you all are giving it to us is really giving people what they're saying in the chat box is that you're breaking it down on a level where people can uptake it, and that's what's important. It's important. That's what this is a basic 101, because we want to give you the nuts and bolts, and then from there you can build on that. So I think you all are doing just an awesome job of your own personal experience and just breaking down some of these barriers. There's been barriers for us to understanding the political system, the democracy, the power that we have as civilians, and the power we have together as civilians that we don't always take advantage of. But so thank you so very much. I'm going to try to wrap this up by talking about, policy watches, right? People heard of policy watches, keeping our eyes and our ears open. What are we keeping our eyes and our ears open to? We're keeping our eyes and our ears open to that domestic policy agenda that these two ladies just talked about, right? And even some of the domestic policy agenda is actually some of PWN's policy platform. You know, the United States government works on criminalization, so does PWN. The United States government works on economics, so does PWN. So a couple of those domestic policy agendas happen to show up in PWN's own policy platform. So what are we keeping our eyes and ears open for? When something's happening to the social public policy, when something's happening to the economic policy, when something's happened to environmental, when something's happened to criminalization, when something's happened to any of those 6 categories of domestic policy, it becomes our business, and lots of times we'll do a call to action. And we've been doing this call to action over the last few days because our health care is being changed in a way that's going to be very harmful to folks. People are calling it Trump care now. It used to be called Obamacare. We're talking about the Affordable Care Act and expansion of Medicaid, which is right now is on the chopping block to be chopped. And we've been fighting for the last couple of days because this bill goes back to the Senate tomorrow. So we asked, even this morning, there was a big rush saying we still have another day. Calls to action. So what I wanted to say about calls to action is that it's not like send me an email and I'll ignore it later, right? When calls to action are sent, they are speaking directly to each of us, right? They're not speaking to me, and they're not just speaking to me, but they're not speaking to you. They're speaking to all of us. This is not the time where we go jump in the pool, go roll a blunt. This is not the time that we do that. This is the time that, wow, something's going on. And we've been talking to PWN for a while because we need to have some sort of word that means this is important, like this is not a test, something so that we rally our members. So the last thing I heard was that we had over 500 calls, I think it was yesterday, but we know we have over 300,000 women living in this country living with HIV. So if 500 of us called in yesterday, then we need 250,000 more women to make that call. So some of us, we have to make those calls again and encourage other women how to make them and teach them. Take the phone. This is what you do. So when we send out a call to action, there's generally lots of instructions that go along with it. There's usually you click here and you can go ahead and voice your opposition to a particular bill. But these calls to actions are really, really important. We don't have buses to get on to go to D.C. to lay out in front of the White House. Sometimes it doesn't have to be done that way because we have the technology. We have Twitter, Facebook, it's Thunderstorm. We have all these different things that we can use. And so sometimes when the call to action comes up, you'll see a picture of a phone, you'll see a picture of a computer, which means this is something that you can do from right where you are. And so the calls to actions are definitely connected to the threats to our domestic policy. So I tried to draw some arrows here to try to make you understand. The only call to action right now is the one I'm talking about, is the one that's the most active one that we need you guys to get on to today and tomorrow. Take action, call on members of Congress to protect our health care, right? And then there's a website there, which is actually PWN's alert website, that you can go there. But the bill is called the American Health Care Act. It's packed with giveaways to the rich, while implementing changes that would result in over 24 million people losing health care coverage by 2026. This is a crisis. So when we have a call to action, we're saying to you all, if we don't change this, if we don't push this bill back, we're going to be in crisis. So we need everybody to take action, and if that means pick up the phone. If that means send an email, that's what it means. If it means click on to PWN's Action Alert, and we'll give you step-by-step how to do it. So I see some people said they've been calling. Yeah, a lot of folks have been calling, and then even in PWN's in their Action Alert, there was another email. There was another place you could click and tell us what was said, what was the reaction, and that was really nice yesterday. Watching people give a report back about what the reaction was when they called their congressman and when they called their senator. So this American Health Care Act, that we know it's a direct threat to our public health policy, right? But it's also a threat to our social policy as well, right? Because it's going to take money out of poor people's hands that poor people already don't have, right? It's also a threat to our environmental policy, right? Because people are going to be not well. They're not going to be as well as they can be. People don't have health insurance. We also know that people who don't have health insurance, that's another vulnerability for people even contracting HIV, right? And then even if you look at it, it also impacts the economic policy, right? Because this is going to knock out the Affordable Care Act. It's going to knock out coverage for people, health care for people, for over 24 million people. So not only is this a threat to the public health policy, it's a threat to the majority of the domestic policy agenda. So when we send a call to action out, it's because it's connected. It's a threat that's connected to one of these categories of the United States public policy. And that's why we wanted to give you that information earlier, to kind of so that you could connect the dots to why when you see a call to action, what does that mean, right? Does that mean me? Yes, it means you. Is it going to impact you? Yes, it will impact you somewhere along the line. I think I used to watch Martin Kane or Martin years ago, and somebody on Martin would say it may cost a little, it may cost a lot, but it's going to cost you, right? And so we have to respond as activists and social justice advocates and human rights activists. We have another responsibility as people who live in a democracy and the people who are advocates, that we take action when we see these calls to action. That's what it means. It means that we need you to make a phone call. It doesn't take 8 hours. We don't need you to do an 8-hour job. We don't need you to get a plane ticket. We don't need you to pack a suitcase. All you need to do is push a couple of buttons, right? And pushing those buttons they add up. They actually add up. Because when I called yesterday, I asked the person on the phone how many people have called. And people been calling in. They said, yes, people are calling in. I felt good to hear that people were calling in, so much to the point they wanted to get my name and my address and put me down as the person who actually called in. And so again, taking the call to action to protect our health care. There were now on this slide you'll see a phone, you'll see a computer. Lots of times that's telling you can do it on your phone. If you don't have a computer, you can do this on your phone. If you have a computer, you can do it on your computer, right? Because the calls to actions are connected to this category of the domestic policy. It becomes necessary, right, to use our civilian power that Venita talked about. It becomes necessary to use that civic education that we talked about. It becomes necessary to do that civic engagement, because not only are we going to make that call or get on the computer and follow that link, we're going to send this out to other people. We're going to put this on you know how they say you can share what you just did on your Facebook pages. We can add this to our Facebook pages. I'm going to come here to tell you, because after we do what we need to do to show that we oppose this bill, then we can take another step, and that's put it on your social media. So that's going to encourage other people who didn't know, oh, wow, there's something going on. Maybe I need to, take action as well, right? So in addition to when you see these calls to action, we generally give you a script, too. Some people just need a script, right? Somebody said, what happens to people who can no longer get the meds and care they're receiving by 2020? My answer is I apologize. I can't type. I'm shaking too much. We don't want you shaking. Thank you so much for sending it. I'm not sure who sent it. Looks like Angel Stetson from Sarasota, Florida. Yeah, we're going to continue. So we have 2 more days, and we've been putting this call to action out all over the country. Not just women living with HIV, people living with HIV, and people who support us. Right? If you have family members, there with you, have them call and just do the same script. Every call matters. After a congressman or a senator gets about a half a dozen calls, they know something's up. They know that we're telling them now. We live in a representative democracy, and we are the people, and this is what the people are asking you to do. They're asking you to vote a certain way because we elected you to represent our own interests. And so I actually used the script that was given to me. I called yesterday. I told them my name and what zip code I lived in. I told them I'm calling to express my opposition to the new Republican health care bill that's currently in the House, right? I told them I identified myself as a person living with HIV, that this was unacceptable, that this is going to result in people not being covered. Some people are not going to be able to afford the coverage, and I asked how was my congressman standing on voting, and could I count on him to oppose this bill? I was told that the congressman was going to oppose the bill, and I was given my information. So I went back on and I clicked over and I put that information into the Google spreadsheet, into the section where they wanted me to put my results. How did the call go? So I just followed, and it felt really good, like following through. I really felt like, for a minute I had done something like really huge. I had done something large. I had done something major. I actually tried to change the world. And I remember years ago I had a gentleman, he was the commissioner of the Philadelphia jail. He used to call me his favorite activist. I spent time in his jail for 6 months. That was about 16 years ago. And since then we actually became friends, and he always says to me, he says, Ms. Shabazz, never stop trying to change the world. Right? And I say the same thing to you all. Never stop trying to change the world. And so when I made my call and when I did my action, I really felt like, well, I'm still trying to change the world. And so these calls to action are designed to give us all an opportunity, right, to make a large impact. To use our collective civilian power to make the impact that we need. And I know right now they're hearing us from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the North to the South. They are hearing what the people are saying right now. We have just one more day tomorrow. It's going to get voted on, so we all need you all to click on to where it says Action Alert PWN. You can go right to our website and go to the Action Alert, or you can go back to one of the emails we've been sending you for the last couple of days and just click on and make sure that your senator and your congressman knows that you oppose the Republican health care bill, because we're in a fight for our lives right now, right? There's some other ways that we can make an impact, right? We can also collect contact information, who our constituents and supporters are. We've been asking women to do that since the beginning of the year, whether you're in the chapter, even if you're not in the chapter. If you're a friend of PWN-USA, if there are people in your community who say they support people living with HIV, let's get their contact information. They could live in your building. They could be at the food bank where you go. They could be at the laundry, right? Start just collecting their information, because we may need them to make this call. We may need them to click that button, right? So it's just not people living with HIV, but it's people who support us as well. We have to start forming relationships with other movements that may not be HIV specific, right? But that's how we build that power and how we build our base, right? Because I heard them talk. I heard Kamaria and Venita talk about environmental policy. Environmental policy is so much more than clean air and clean water. Environmental policies mean, are the drugs in your neighborhood? Is your neighborhood taken over with gun violence? That's how we connect with the environment. And so a lot of these movements that are non-HIV specific but they are specific to the environment that we live in. And so it becomes our business, right? Everything in the environment becomes our business. So that's another way that we can make an impact, right? By using our organizational skills to lead these movements. Because a lot of people in these movements don't have the organizational skills that people have who've been to some of our courses and some of our summits at PWN-USA. And when you do your voter drives, they're not just for people living with HIV. We need people with HIV, of course, to be registered to vote, but these voter drives are for everybody. Every vote counts, and voter drives is another way of civic engagement, civic participation that we can be meaningfully involved, right? So here's to do this. If you want to win, we're going to keep our eye out we're going to keep our eyes and ears open for anything that's going on with the domestic policy agenda, social policy, public health, education, environmental policy, criminal justice, and economic justice. And so my last slide asks, why do action alerts matter, right? Actually, they matter because they're connected to the threat of the categories of domestic policy. Calls for action are speaking directly to all of us. They can't be ignored, right? It gives us the opportunity to use our civilian power, our civic education, and civic engagement. And believe me, ladies, when I say this is just one. We just can't afford to sit this one out. You know, I mean, sometimes we can sit on the side and we can rock in the chair and let things go. But for the next 4 years, for the next 8 years, we need everybody front and center, all hands on deck. We just can't afford to sit this one out. I always say the last thing I heard, the only way that you can coast is downhill. So we have to be very, very proactive. We cannot afford to be reactive and think that once the thing is gone, we're going to get it back, because it's not what's going to happen this time around. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this political education series, right, to give us the combination of knowledge and the combination of skills that we're going to need to survive the next 4 years and beyond. And that was our last slide that we had for you guys, and I want to thank you all for hanging in there. There is a short survey that we're going to ask everybody to take at the end to let us know if you're able to uptake this information. Is it timely? Is it relevant? But for right now, we'd like to see if there's more. We still have about 15 minutes. If there are more questions in the chat box, we'd like to answer them. Or if somebody wants to come off mute, I believe some of the people in the back office, I'm not sure how to do all this. We can, or maybe you could come off mute. Maybe you're *6 to come off mute if you have a question you want to ask to any of the trainers or any of the presenters. And we're going to also look in the chat box for questions as well. Oh, great. Lapina says she's passing this script on to other women and church groups in the community. This is awesome. And that's civic engagement. That is civic participation, right? And yes, every vote does count, Andrea. You know, so I know some people in Texas recently had to be deputized in order to do voter registration jobs. At least someone went out and did what they had to do. And I never knew that, you know, because where the state I live, you didn't have to be deputized. But in some states, you actually had to take a course, maybe a little hour or two, where one person in your organization has to be deputized to be able to do voter registrations. You know, they're doing a lot of things to stop people from voting. You know, you have to have the proper ID. If you don't have this ID, you know, you can't vote. And then they've raised the price of the amount that it takes for you to get the ID, and there are all kind of reasons why people can't vote. Some people who have felony charges, even though they've done their probation and parole, they're still not able to vote. A lot of our voting power is locked away in these jails in the United States. So, yeah, our communities are destabilized, and we don't have the voting power that we need. So we can match ourselves together. We can use our civilian power to engage people and make sure that they do get registered to vote. And then when the time comes that we can get folks out get them actually there to the voting polls as well. Venita talked about abandoned houses. That's also a part of our environmental policy, right? How do we meet our environment when we have houses that are abandoned and lots and things that are just in disarray, and we see no public dollars coming, right, to our communities, right? And these are things that should draw us to action. These are calls to action all the time. Things we see with our eyes and things we hear with our ears are all call to actions, right? And so we get with some of these other organizations that are in the community. If you're not some of them have just become block captains. That's a great way to be a part of the local administrative system. Just to be a part of, be a block captain, so that you can call your city council, on things like this where there's abandoned buildings and stuff in your community. Are there any other questions? Any comments, questions? Folks are giving us lots of praise. Thank you so much. Great. So I'm going to say that if there are no more comments or questions, we have looks like we have about 11 minutes left. I want to just give people an opportunity to go to the survey, and please fill out the survey. This survey is really, really important to give PWN staff to let us know that we're on the right track and that we're giving you the kind of information that you want. And it also gives you an opportunity, if there's something that's missing, you can let us know what was missing and what we can do better. Because, you guys, you drive our agenda is driven by the needs of women living with HIV. So you let us know what it is that you want us to be doing, and that's exactly what we'll be doing. So I'm going to go ahead and end the recording right now. And once I end this recording, if you're near a computer, your survey should just pop up. I'm going to ask you to please take those surveys. I want to thank Kamaria. I want to thank Venita Ray. We couldn't have done this without you. You ladies were just awesome and hot, and just let it just flow. And you got some really good comments in the chat box. And I hope that you all show that in your evaluation as well. So somebody said they called and they had not received any calls from Texas, from San Antonio, Texas. So you had your aunts and friends and sisters from Pennsylvania call on your behalf. That was great. So there's another way to advocate, right? So somebody from Texas is calling their family in other places and tell people in other places that they need to make these calls, right? So there's a script, and don't forget to visit PWN's action alert on our website if you need more help with doing that. And don't forget to pass it on to your social media once you do it, so other folks can know that you are involved in civic engagement, and hopefully it will influence them to become involved in civic engagement as well. So on behalf of PWN-USA, I want to thank everybody for attending this meeting. There is a link that I'm trying to put into the chat box, but yes, it will take you right to the link.